In Alvor, the Mawrik hunts beneath the fog, stealing faces to lure new victims. Thomas thought he knew Eleanor, until her smile twisted into something monstrous. In a village of illusions, trust the wrong face, and you'll lose more than your life. Alvor was a village you wouldn't find on modern maps, and if you did, you'd probably wish you hadn't. A place stitched together by mist and silence, where the trees leaned just a little too close and the cold seemed to breathe against your skin. There, in the center of the crumbling town, sat a crooked wooden bench, the kind of place where promises were made, and broken. Thomas and Eleanor were regulars there. Young, hopeful, and blissfully blind to the weight Alvor carried. On this fog-drenched evening, Thomas held Eleanor's hand, thumb tracing the small birthmark that bloomed on her right palm, a mark he loved, a mark he thought he'd know anywhere. The old clock tower chimed weakly above them, coughing up a rusty echo that made the mist shudder. Thomas was nervous, heart racing. Hidden deep inside his jacket pocket was a simple gold ring. Tonight, he planned to change everything. A vow made under the ghostly fog, in a village that had seen too many silent goodbyes. But some promises, in places like Alvor, don't end the way you think they will. The night air was thicker now, curling around Thomas's ankles like ghostly hands trying to pull him back. He laughed softly, brushing off the shiver crawling up his spine. Eleanor smiled at him from the bench, her eyes reflecting the flickering light of the old lamppost above. Everything about her looked so perfectly right, too perfect, maybe, but Thomas was too swept up in the moment to notice. "I'll be right back," he whispered, squeezing her delicate hand. She nodded, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and promised she'd wait right there. It was supposed to be just a few minutes. He sprinted toward his house, heart hammering with a nervous excitement only true love can summon. As he ran, the fog thickened unnaturally, rolling in waves that blurred the world into a formless gray. Even the familiar creaks of Alvor's ancient woodwork seemed to fall silent. Still, Thomas barely noticed. His mind was filled only with the image of Eleanor's smile, the life they were about to start together. But behind every perfect smile, in Alvor, something ancient sometimes watches, and waits. Thomas burst into his house, breathless but grinning, the little velvet box clutched tight in his hand. But the moment he stepped inside, the air changed. Heavy. Wrong. His friends, Walter and Edith, stood frozen in the living room, their faces drained of all color, eyes glassy with something close to horror. A newspaper, trembling between Walter's fingers, was the only sound breaking the heavy silence. "What's going on?" Thomas asked, his voice cracking. They didn't answer. Instead, Walter slowly handed him the newspaper, his hand shaking so badly the page crinkled. The front page screamed the headline. "Body found outside Alvor, identity unconfirmed." The photograph was grainy, black and white, but unmistakable. A girl, her body mutilated beyond recognition, except for one chilling detail. On the exposed, mangled hand, a small, dark birthmark on the right palm. Eleanor's mark. Thomas staggered back, the newspaper falling from his hands. His mind screamed, "This can't be real. She was just sitting with me. She smiled at me. She held my hand." But sometimes in Alvor, what you hold, slips away before you even realize it's gone. Thomas ran through the streets, the fog now so thick it felt like he was swimming through it. His lungs burned, his legs trembled, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Eleanor was waiting, she had to be. Every slap of his shoes against the cobblestones echoed too loudly, bouncing off the crooked buildings that leaned in like eavesdropping giants. Finally, the square opened before him. The old wooden bench stood alone under the broken lamplight, bathed in a dim, sickly glow. Empty. Silent. As if no one had ever been there at all. Thomas slowed, chest heaving, confusion and dread tangling in his mind like a noose. He called out her name. Once. Twice. The sound was devoured by the mist, absorbed into the oppressive stillness that had swallowed the village whole. The bench creaked softly as if mocking him. The fog twisted around the lamppost, around the bench, around Thomas himself, and in that swirling chaos, something unseen moved. In Alvor, sometimes when you turn your back, the world rearranges itself, and not in your favor. Thomas stood frozen by the bench, heart pounding so loudly he could barely hear the world around him. And then, he did hear something. A whisper. So faint it could have been the mist itself, but no, he knew that voice. Eleanor's voice. Calling him. Softly. Sweetly. He spun around. Through the thick, writhing fog, he caught a glimpse, just a flicker, of her silhouette standing near the fountain. She was waving. Smiling. The same soft, familiar smile that had once calmed every storm inside him. Without thinking, Thomas stumbled forward. But with each step, something gnawed at the back of his mind. Her posture was strange, too stiff, too perfect. And that smile, it stretched too wide, the corners twitching unnaturally, like a puppet forced into a grin. The closer he got, the heavier the air became, clinging to his skin, pressing into his chest. His instincts screamed for him to run, to turn back, but love is louder than fear. Especially in places like Alvor. And sometimes, in Alvor, love is exactly the bait Mawrik needs to weave his trap. Helena's door creaked open before Thomas even knocked. It was like she had been waiting for him, as if she already knew what shadow followed close behind. Her small house was cluttered with relics and yellowed books, the air thick with the scent of old smoke and damp wood. She ushered him in silently, her gnarled hands trembling just slightly. "You saw her, didn't you?" Helena rasped, her voice dry as brittle leaves. But it wasn't her. Thomas, pale and shaking, could barely nod. Helena lit a single candle, its flame flickering against the dark, and began to tell the story few in Alvor dared to speak aloud. Mawrik, she said, was not a ghost or a demon, it was worse. An ancient parasite that didn't just wear its victim's skin, it created perfect illusions of them. Copies so flawless even a mother wouldn't know the difference. But the mist always betrayed Mawrik's presence. It cloaked the world, disorienting its prey. And just before Mawrik struck, the illusion would falter, only for a second, a smile too wide, a movement too stiff, a flicker of something inhuman behind familiar eyes. In Alvor, you can talk, laugh, even hold hands with someone, and never realize you're already too late. Thomas stumbled back into the fog-drenched streets, Helena's warnings hammering against his mind. He had to see for himself. Had to know the truth. He followed the trail where he thought he had seen Eleanor, or whatever had been wearing her face, disappear into the mist. The path led him to the edge of the woods, where the trees crowded close together like conspiring figures. There, half buried under a sheet of rotting leaves, he found it, an abandoned shack, its door hanging off rusted hinges, the scent of decay oozing from within. Inside, the walls were lined with horror. Human skins, dozens of them, hung like grotesque garments, stitched and stretched as if waiting to be worn again. Some faces still bore faint echoes of life, a slack jaw here, a frozen blink there. Thomas choked on bile, recognizing not just strangers, but villagers he thought had simply moved away. And near the center of the room, illuminated by a single beam of moonlight slicing through the broken roof, was another, fresh, clean, still dripping. It was a perfect replica of Thomas himself. In Alvor, if you ever wonder why someone looks just a little too perfect, it's already too late to run. Thomas bolted from the shack, the image of his own face hanging lifeless burned into his mind. The night swallowed him whole, the fog twisting tighter around his legs, his arms, clawing at his breath. Behind him, footsteps. Not one set, many. Echoing. Surrounding. Voices called out to him from the mist. Eleanor's soft voice pleading, Walter's deep laugh, Edith's gentle whisper, all comforting, all wrong. He stumbled forward, refusing to look back, because deep down he knew, if he looked, he would see them. Their faces perfect, inviting, but hollow. Imitations. Echoes stitched together by Mawrik. The village had transformed into a labyrinth of shadows. No matter which alley he turned down, no matter how fast he ran, the fog thickened. Shapes flickered at the edge of his vision, smiling, waving, reaching. Every face a trap. Every voice a lie. and somewhere behind the masks, Mawrik himself watched, patient and hungry. In Alvor, sometimes the faster you run, the faster you fall straight into Mawrik's waiting arms. Thomas collapsed against the crumbling stone wall of an abandoned shop, chest heaving, vision spinning. The fog thickened until it was almost solid, wrapping around him like wet linen. Out of the haze, a figure emerged. Eleanor. She looked perfect. Warm, smiling, reaching out a trembling hand just like she always had. "Come back to me, Thomas," she whispered. "We can still be together. Forever." But deep inside, something primal screamed. The smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, stretching too wide, revealing teeth too sharp. And then Mawrik's true voice slithered through the illusion. "Give me your skin willingly, and I'll let you stay with her. Refuse, and I'll take it anyway." Thomas's heart tore itself apart. Could he betray his very existence for a fantasy? Could he live in a world of illusions just to feel her hand in his again? The fog pressed closer, Mawrik's countless stolen faces blinking at him from every corner. Thomas clenched his fists, nails digging into his palms, feeling the weight of the only real thing he had left, his choice. In Alvor, sometimes the worst monsters are the ones that offer you exactly what your heart aches for. Days later, Alvor looked the same, on the surface. The crooked buildings still leaned over the streets. The clock tower still gasped out broken chimes. And the fog, thicker than ever, still strangled every corner of the village. On the old wooden bench in the square, Thomas sat. Smiling. Waving at passers-by. His posture was perfect. His hair, flawless. His clothes, unwrinkled despite the mist. To anyone at a glance, he looked the same. Maybe even a little too perfect. Helena, standing across the street, gripped her walking stick tightly. She watched him carefully. The way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. The way his head tilted just a bit too stiffly. She knew. Oh, she knew. Thomas was gone. Whatever wore his skin now was nothing but another hollow face among many. Another trophy in Mawrik's growing collection. The villagers hurried by, avoiding Thomas's gaze. Because in Alvor, when someone smiles too long, too wide, and doesn't blink, you don't smile back. You don't ask questions. You just pray you're not next. After all, in Alvor, the fog never leaves, and neither do Mawrik's faces. If this story chilled you to the bone, don't let the fog take you too. Hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments, would you recognize a monster wearing a familiar face?